DJ Double, DJ Stylus, and today we are joined by a very special guest.
It's a special one today.
Yeah, super special. CEO of Deltic, the Deltic Group, Peter Marks. How are you?
Yeah, good. I feel I need a DJ name.
Oh, well, what would your DJ name be?
That's a good question
I can't think of one bad enough. Because believe me, I am a bad DJ. Many years ago, I had to DJ. I had to stand in for about 2 hours whilst we found a DJ. And I realised what a hard job it is and how terrible I was at it. I don't
quickly realised I'll stick to the business end instead. Then.
Yeah, exactly. You know, no, I know my... I know where my strengths lie. It isn't on the decks.
Right. I was going to say, for all these years, like working in clubs, and you've only been behind the decks once, Peter.
Oh no, I always go behind the decks, but say hello to you guys when I'm there. I always make a point of doing that. But no, definitely, you don't want me on there. The thing is, as well, that as you get older, you realise that you're out of touch with your audience, but you do different things, and you surround yourself with people who are in touch with your audience.
Okay.
And so that's how I can still do this at this great age that I've reached.
Keeps you plugged in.
Yeah, very much so. But if I was to do that, I'd have to, I wouldn't recognise any of the track names. I'd have to be listening to them and say, oh yeah, that's that one, is it? And I'll
So what's the musical preference, Peter? Like what kind of stuff do you listen to at home?
I listen to all sorts of music. I like music that's going to alter my mood. So if I'm tired, I'm driving home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to listen to whispering Bob Harris and a few soporific songs. I want some, turn it up, some loud rock.
Okay.
If I'm stuck on the M6, M5 junction just north of Birmingham, I stick classic FM on to calm me down.
Yeah.
But I love all sorts of music. It's a fantastic world, and it just makes people happy.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So, Peter, before we get into the main topic for the podcast today, can you give us because we've got a lot of younger DJs, and of course we've got DJs from across the country. Not all of them will be familiar with who you are because they're not all Deltic-based DJs. So, can you give us like a brief background on you, your business, and how you got into the position you are and the nightlife industry?
Sure. Well, look, I actually. I went to Sheffield to study, and I needed a job once I'd left uni, and this was sort of back in the very early 80s. And I sort of fell into the job like so many people in the nightclub and the hospitality business. And I started like very much at the bottom as a trainee manager, bottling up in the day and doing all the horrible jobs. And I worked out that I sort of knew what I was doing, and I loved it. And it's one of those businesses you've got to love to excel in. And I became manager at a very young age of a private business up in Wakefield. It was called Casanova's on Westgate in Wakefield back in the 80s. But this was a phenomenal business. It built another business on the back called Rooftop Gardens. And I sort of started right at the bottom, as I said, and I just worked my way up. I own my own business with 2 other guys in Halifax in 88. In 1991, we opened another club in Birmingham, but that one didn't work out. And I say that because it was a really important part of my journey. Because when things go wrong, that's when you learn a lot about yourself and about the business. I was about 30 years old back then, and I thought, it was a terrible, hard year. I learned a lot, and I didn't think I was going to stay in the business for much longer. And then I sort of looked around and thought, well, what else can I do? And I didn't like the look of anything else that I could easily slot into. I didn't want to run a chain of pubs. My view was it was about entertainment, late night, the DJ-led entertainment in particular. So I took a job back with a company called Whitegate Leisure then, which became Northern Leisure. And I worked my way up. The slippery pole, I was an area manager. Then I did a job that actually was the most interesting of jobs. I went round a whole load of the country buying nightclubs. I bought... Sounds great when you're 25. I was actually doing this when I was about 35 to 40, and I bought about 150 nightclubs.
Wow.
Right.
And it gave me a fantastic working knowledge of the whole country at the time, because of course it goes out of date. If I haven't been to Perth in Scotland for 10 years, then you have to go and relearn. And I brought in all the sort of lessons that I had from going, when that year in Birmingham went wrong. I literally sort of knew what to look for when I went and spoke to these people. Moving forward a lot of years, obviously, I've had senior roles since 1995 in the industry. Deltic Group is the largest nightclub operator in the country. Bought out of the ashes of the formerly great business called Luminar, and it was a brilliant business, and a lot of people sort of slag it off for what it became at the end, but it made mistakes that you could only see in hindsight, such as they took on too much debt. And then they didn't have the monies to keep our nightclubs fresh and appealing. And so come 2011, the business collapsed, fell on its knees, and me and some other people, high net worth individuals who I'm hugely grateful for, sort of took a punt and picked the company up sort of ran with what was a really easy, simple strategy. Well, let's make these nightclubs worth going to again. Because that was really that easy. It wasn't a really difficult business to put right and put on the track, because it was obvious to anybody who knew the clubs that they just hadn't been spent. There was no investment in them. They were knackered, and a whole load of really good bar operators had come along and stolen their customers. And all we did was make them great again, get our marketing right, get our music offering right, where we could offer 2 sets or 3 sets of different style musics in our business, and it sort of worked.
Sort of worked.
Yeah, I definitely say it worked, because I mean, it's, from when Luminar then became Deltic, it definitely turned it around. And I noticed because I've been playing in some of the Deltic venues for years now, and I've noticed when the refurbs happened, it kind of did inject brand new energy into those clubs and fill them back up again, which was great to see.
Well, they were really, see, the thing is, the nightclub industry has always sort of reinvented itself sort of every 5 years. Clubs change their name, etc. But daft as it sounds, that's not a great model, because if you have to spend a lot of money on refurbishment and renaming clubs every 5 years, then you can't afford to spend proper money on the clubs, because you've got to get your money back. And sometimes it takes you 3 years just to get your money back. And then there's a risk that the business collapses a bit in year 4. You've done no more than get your money back. That's no good. That's not good business. So to be able to sort of spend proper money on proper business, I took a view that actually the 5-year was no longer the right sort of refurbishment cycle length. And we could probably look at 7 or 8 years because of the lack of choice in nightclubs. That didn't mean to say that we didn't sort of maintain the business and look after them in proper manner. But it does mean that we've now got something that I believe is a lot more maintainable. And that's really important, because you've got to bring investors on the journey. And if you're going to bring investors, they're going to make money out of it. Not stupid money, just right sort of sensible returns. And so that's what we did. And that's why we were able to spend, £1 million sometimes refurbishing some of our clubs, because we knew that we didn't probably need to revisit for another major refurb for another 8 years plus.
Did you guys see the business venture as a bit of a risk at first, with so many clubs needing like the initial investment? Was that something you guys thought about, or were you confident in the way you guys were approaching things?
I think the difficulty is that I know this business back to front. You know what you're doing. I sort of know what I'm doing. Well, I sort of keep telling people anyway. And reality is that it wasn't. I knew it would work, but it was to persuade people who'd never been in the industry, the investors, that it would work was a really important point as well, because you can have all the knowledge, but if you haven't got the cash to do it yourself, you've got to persuade other people, to part with their money. And our guys are 3 individuals. It's not a private equity fund, it's their money, and they took a view that the properties in the company were worth a certain amount of money, so they bought the company for that amount of money, and then we just rolled the dice. We went with it, and they've been very supportive. For that, I'm enormously grateful.
That's amazing.
When it comes to the nightlife industry and nightclubs, so in my experience, and I'm talking specifically from a DJ point of view, the way we look at it is entertainment has to be top notch. Like, it has to be the best possible entertainment for people to have the best night. And in my experience, a lot of the time with entertainment, you get what you pay for. effectively. Now, as a businessman, how do you balance the making sure that the customers have the best possible experience they can in the clubs, but also, as you said, you've got investors to make sure that they're making money. So how do you balance that experience versus making the spreadsheets add up so that it's financially viable?
Simple. You know, this is a business that has to work on turnover more than cost. You've got to get the people in, and they'll only come in if it's good and it's worth keep coming back to. So I don't spend all my time poring over costs. I expect the cost to fall in line with the turnover. But the important thing for me is that managers are driving the turnover and giving people a good experience. And absolutely key to that is the DJ or the DJs in the club. And I've always known that. I've never changed my tune, literally since the day that I was on those decks back in the 80s, realising how rubbish I am. I realised also how important the DJ was. By the way, what I didn't say is that when the reserve DJ turned up, the whole bloody atmosphere lifted through the roof, and I realised how bad I was. But you know, and there's been many a time when I've often said that, you know, that you've got to have the balance right. We could always overspend and then make no money, and that's no good either. So you've got to get the elements right, whether that's marketing or service at the bars, or enough people behind the bar, or, you know, enough doormen to make it safe, or the right DJ. It's everything, and that's why we let the general managers make those sort of calls, because the general manager is ultimately responsible. A lot more than a pub, is ultimately responsible for the success of the venue. And any DJ any general manager worth his salt knows how to entertain, knows how to bring the right DJs in. I'm not saying they're all perfect at it. And sometimes we know there's a little bit of, I'm looking after my mate here. I've just come and I'm going to bring my mate to drive 150 miles every single Friday night to carry on doing this room. But we let them do that, because whether it's right or wrong, and we let them choose how much they should be paying DJs and entertainment, because ultimately they've got to have the top line right for the rest to fall into place on the profit and loss. It's not about cramming costs. Now, there are pub companies out there, it's all about the costs. They think that you can't drive sales, you open the doors and they just come in, and you've got to offer good service and good product and the right price and all those things. But we know we are driving our business. We're driving our business, and all we can do at the Milton Keynes office is give people the reins to do the right thing. But it's a balance. I've got managers who have been fantastic at driving the business, but have spent so much money that it's actually got to the point where it's less profitable than if they'd have been not spending as much on Facebook, or not spending as much on say a PA, etc. But you can't just take this sort of thing of, I'll only put that PA on that night if it makes me money. Sometimes it's a story build, or you're coming up against competition. So it's 100%. Enormously complicated.
Yeah, it is a tricky process, most definitely. So with the beginning of lockdown, obviously, I think it was March 23rd. I think I might have the date slightly wrong, but it was one weekend in March. We suddenly all saw Boris on the TV who said, right, as of tonight, no one can work in the clubs. All the clubs are closed. So I'd like to get two perspectives from you from the start of the lockdown to now. So how has the lockdown affected you personally and your day-to-day operations? And then the business side, obviously, the things that we know Deltic can't open any club. So I'd like you to...
Yeah, listen, I remember that. And I remember saying we were shut with no notice whatsoever, but we could see the tea leaves. On the Monday, we were packed. On the Tuesday, it had halved. On the Wednesday, it was looking dire. I then had a board meeting that I always have on that Thursday. It was the regular board meeting, and I said, we've got to close. I think I'm right in saying that we announced it about 24 hours before the government did, because it was
okay, right.
The other thing you may remember is that Deltic paid its DJs for that weekend.
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah.
But who'd have ever thought it was then going to drag on for as many months? I thought it was the right thing to do, because you're self-employed, and although, you know, you could always argue, well, we didn't need to do it. It was absolutely the right thing for us to do. And if only I had the money to have carried on looking after DJs or paying them 80% and getting that money off the government, I bloody well would have done. Then, well, let's go back to your point. So how has it affected the business? The business is in difficult straits at the moment. We've had no real income other than bits and pieces from repurposed nightclubs that have been repurposed as beer halls with limited success and not much in the way of profit. so we're 7 months in. We've burned through a lot of cash. It's no secret the fact that we are talking to advisors about looking at options on our way forward, because we want to somehow get the business into a shape so that when all of this is over, we're still here, largely as the same sort of business. But it's, as it goes on, it actually gets much more complicated, because you owe rent to landlords, and they're in it with us. They're not our enemy.
Yeah.
Lots of people say, "Oh, landlords are all terrible, bugger them." Actually, no. Our landlords, are invested in properties that give them a steady stream of income. That might be an ex-operator who used to own the club who sold it to Luminar back in the day, or it could be a big pension fund. But they've all got to try and look after themselves. So we're looking at ways we can get through this and get through it in the best shape possible. But the chances are that we will have to sort of bring in new money, because we can't just carry it. We'll run out of money. So
and that's what is that by way of investors? Then is that what you're talking about? New money?
It could be investors. It's too early to say because the advisor's only just come on board. Right. But inevitably, it's also we've got another angle here, and that is with government, because we've been talking to government as an industry over the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, and we've said, look, this isn't fair. You've shut us. You've given lots of other companies in hospitality a leg up. Well, we've actually had very, very little as late night operators. We've not been able to get C-bills loans, CL bills loans, bounce back loans. Our rateable values have been too high, so we've not been able to get the rate grants that were out there. It's almost like every single piece of help that they offered to hospitality, which has been welcomed hugely, hasn't drained down to us, except furlough for our staff, which is important, but we still burn more money than the staff, because it's not just about staff, it's about our fixed costs that we have to carry on paying. So our accounts just gone down and down and down and down. The other thing is we got rates forgiven. We're not paying rates. So that's been a help, but it's not enough. And the government recognise that we are the only sector, along with live music, in hospitality that has had no help, still had no sort of way of opening in some way, like, Eat Out to Help Out was enormously helpful. Most pubs have been able to operate until recently, till 12 o'clock, or sort of up at 70-80% of where they used to be. So they're making money. We've had none of that. We've just had our cash drained down the plug hole, and they recognise it's not fair. And if they want to keep us shut, they've got to support us. They've got to support the DJ community as well. And at the moment, we've had none, but we expect to hear back from them over the next, I'm hoping next 1 week or two. We've got companies out there, not Deltic, but we've got companies out there we know that are going to run out of cash by the end of October. Right. That's really important. The other point of your question was, how am I doing? And thanks for asking. Well, I've not stopped. I've been working 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, to try and get us through this. We always had a plan that we would get through till September, and as long as we were open in September, we'd have been okay for definite. So it was all about running models and scenarios to ensure that we got through this and then come out the other side in September. But it hasn't happened, and as you know, that means that I've sort of changed to doing a lot more media, to work with UK hospitality and the government to get us back, and that has been the large part of my focus. And personally, it's a bucking bronco, but I'm used to riding bucking broncos. I've ridden a few in my life. It's just another bucking bronco. So I'm really pleased when people say, "Oh, how are you, Peter?" I'm okay.
He's not stopped. I've not stopped. It's another day in the office for us.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I actually have more worry over our management teams, our DJs, our light jocks who've been sat at home with nothing to do, wondering how on earth they're going to get through this. There's been mental health issues. I'm not going to name names, but I've seen management with tears running down their faces, so pleased to be open in a little way, so worried about the future. Their jobs, their livelihoods, and of course, if they're used to running clubs, it's difficult to morph into something else. In hospitality is probably where you'd end up, but it's all in a mess. So the alternatives are pretty thin.
Yeah.
Did you expect this situation to go on for so long, Peter?
No, not at all.
I think we're like 7 months in now, and like, can you see like an end line for this?
Well, I think it's fair to say that if you look back and you think, well, why have government done what they've done? You can only come with one conclusion, in my humble opinion, and that is they thought we'd have a vaccine. Because it's the only thing that makes sense when you look back at how they were opening up and getting the schools back, and hey presto. And let's remember, hospitality is not responsible for the majority of the spread. There's very shaky research out there saying nightclubs are any worse. I don't particularly believe they are. I think there is a health and safety risk assessed science-based way back, and we've been working on that, and nothing is going to change my mind that we can get back, but I think we're part of the problem is we're a political football, and people have said nightclubs can't come back, you can't have any social distancing, blah blah blah, and it's become gospel. Hang on a minute, I've got a 96-page science paper that even the government have said has got legs, they will consider it, but here's the rub. At the right time. I think we're part of managing expectations, and that's why we are where we are. And there's no way I could have seen that we would have been shut after 7 months. If I'd have known it was going to be 7, 8, 9 months, I'd have probably done different things back in April and May.
What kind of stuff would you have done different?
I'd have probably tried to save a bit more money, a bit faster, but I don't think it would have made a material difference. I'd have managed the expectations of the team that we're in it for the long haul rather than we're going to be back in September. I don't want to be seen as someone who was over optimistic, and I think it's important when you've got a leadership role that you're seen as honest. And I honestly held the belief that we would be back around September, and I was telling people that all summer. So I think that meant people could relax, enjoy the sun, spend time with their family or whatever, in the knowledge that, Peter says it and he speaks to government, I think it'll be all right. Now, I look a bit of a bozo because I've got it wrong. I don't think I've got it wrong other than the fact that the government have responded in a way to try and keep kicking the can down the road until there's a vaccine. And I think that's largely what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of changing the goalposts every time something comes up. It's like, okay, well, let's move it. What's strange to me is that the way I see it, nightclubs, out of all the hospitality venues, are probably the best places set up to have events that could be safe, because we've got, I don't know if it's every single Deltic venue, but every one that I've worked in has door scanners with ID where you have then you have data of everyone that's come in and out the building, which is easily adaptable with a little bit of money to turn that into some sort of track and trace app. You've got door staff that are trained already and know most of the locals anyway, and they're used to dealing with big crowds, small crowds, they're used to controlling people.
I think even the size of the venues as well. Most of the Deltic venues are really big venues.
Yeah, precisely. The area inside the buildings is huge, so you can easily space things out. You've got trained bar staff, trained VIP hosts and waitresses and all sorts that can do the table service. You've got booths, you've got air conditioning, everything. It's like, right, what do we need a venue to be like? Okay, well, a nightclub almost fits the perfect model for a COVID safe event.
Congratulations on knowing more than the literally,
he sold that well.
You spelt it out as per the science paper. The science paper that not just Deltic, but the whole industry got behind the science paper. Even sort of orchestras and theatres were part of paying for the scientists to come in and do that. And they said every single thing that you said there. We've got we're used to dealing with people who may not behave. Even though the minority, we need to do that. We need the air changes is becoming more and more understood as the right thing. Let's face it, I don't understand why no one has had the balls to say you can't catch this outdoors. They won't say it because scientists by nature, and and it's right that they are cautious. But I've never seen any mass spread outdoors. Even when you go back to Cheltenham Festival, the race course, well, that was because there was a lot of indoor hospitalities and indoor tents. But outdoors, I don't think you get it. Air changes is important, so that's why I'm mentioning outdoors. I know we've got large outdoor spaces, we haven't. And of course, we can do track and trace. We can do temperature checks if that's what was asked of us. We can make people behave themselves. So the only thing that you are slightly lacking on is that point you made about, well, people might want to dance and there's, and how can you have social distancing? Well, actually, reality is, social distancing is only one element of three. And those things: touch, surface touch, air, aerosol, and social distancing. And they just keep banging on social distancing, that's all. Now, it might even be the most, how can I put it, the easiest way to catch the virus would be if I coughed over your shout or whatever. But frankly, we have got many positives over other areas. And on balance, if you add them all up as risk-assessed protocols, we should be able to come back. And I think the government will work with us and will let us back. But we've now got to deal with public perception. The alternative, of course, as you alluded to, is people are going to be in each other's houses and people are going to be in illegal, call them illegal raves, but illegal events. This is not going to stop. And I don't want to sort of make the case by saying it would be even worse if we allow people to go around people's houses. I think, I think it's a cheap way of doing it. We've got to come back because we think we are secure and safe for our staff and our customers. I believe we can, but in the background, we know what's happening. It's the freshers are back. They're all around each other's houses. They're all not giving a monkeys. They all think that they're going to be okay. And as one of the scientists said to me, listen, you need to tell your customers one thing. If you go to an event, have a shower before kissing Granny. We all laughed. No, I mean it. There's a serious message there.
Yeah.
And if you not just wash your hands, but you'll wash your whole body and throw your clothes in the wash, and well, you can't pass it on. So there you have it.
So do you have any venues open currently? Is everything still closed, Peter? Like, what's the
we've got about 24 businesses open in a variety of small ways, but they are small ways. We are taking about 14% of what we normally take. And to give you an idea, normally any business in hospitality, if its sales drop 20% to 80% of the previous year, they're probably making no money and going to go bust.
Okay.
But we're at 86% down. So why are we opening? Well, whilst we don't pay rates and we're still not paying our rents, then our break even drops. But it's important to me that we keep our employees engaged in a small way if we can, our management teams engaged in a small way if we can. That whole mental health thing is important. The whole belief that there is a way back is important. And also some of the DJ community. I was chatting with a DJ on Saturday night in Cambridge, and he was just so grateful to be playing, even though he couldn't put the music up and he wasn't getting the usual crowd feedback, but and he's one of the people, he says he's one of the lucky ones because he works in the day. I know there's plenty that don't.
Yeah, I think it is at that point, isn't it now, Double, where people that are actually still spinning records, like we are a select few that are lucky to still be doing the work. I know me and Double, we're full-time DJs, so we don't do the 9 to 5 as well. So it's a little bit different for us, but stick you on.
In terms of this, so one topic that's been a big point of conversation for us is the fees, the DJ fees moving forwards. And I'm not just talking about Deltic, I'm talking about in general, because there was a large conversation at the start of this that when things start to come back and as businesses were opening with a lower capacity, obviously, like you said, the profit margins begin to drop because they're admitting less people in, ticket sales are down. So there was a huge kind of debate about should DJs compromise on their fees, and if they do, will they be able to then get them back up to where they were previously? Because as you know, like the lifespan of a DJ career is a lot shorter than a conventional career. So what's Deltic's
we've got some DJs in their 60s, I'll tell you.
Oh, okay,
there you go. There you go.
I stand corrected.
I'm not going to mention them, but you know they are out there. But you're right. I mean, listen. To me, I think it's all part of. It's down to the operations team locally, largely, but also with the regional directors to actually assess if there's a way of coming back where the break-even point is making it worthwhile. And if that means that we've got to sort of cut deals with the DJ community. Whilst we build the business back, then you know, and the DJ agrees with it, then that's the sort of thing that we should all be sensible about. I mean, you know, I've taken a big pay cut. Plenty of people have, just to try and get through this. But I think that, you know, what they need to do is sort of speak to the management and say, look, you know, once we get back on our feet, I want to go back to where we were, because that's, you know, it's not a one-way valve. You guys have got bills to pay. And I think it's fair to say that just about everybody, doesn't matter whether you're self-employed or employed, you sort of spend what you normally take home every month. And, you know, even taking a 20% hit is not easy. And listen, I said to you, I worked my way up the slippery pole. You know, I've had no silver spoon upbringing. You know, I know what it's like to have no money. I know what it's like to be a student. I was brought up on a council estate where it was, you know, we never went on holiday, and you know, so I love it when people say it's all right for you, because they don't know my background. But the point is that you never forget that it's tough out there for people, and that you've got to sort of fight the corner and let them, you know, make a living out of it.
How many people in total have you got as employees? So not including and actually, do you know, including the DJs and light jockeys as well, who are contractors? Yeah,
I don't know how many DJ contractors we've got in total at any one time, but I know that we've got about 400 on the books that we will regularly use, but they sort of come and go, but that's it. But Deltic employs around 3,000 people, from sort of normally from September to December, and during the summer that'll drop by about 500 people. Therefore, a lot of those are service staff, etc. Of those, around about 400 are full-time, both at the hub and the management teams, and then the rest are part-time. And we've probably got another, I don't know, 1,000 people in cleaners and security, and DJs and light jobs out there, maybe more. And so, you know, we're a lot of jobs. We're a lot of jobs, and most of those people are young people.
Have you been able to keep everybody on through this time?
We haven't. We couldn't. We would have gone bust if we had.
Right.
We kept everybody on until around about August. Then we lost around about 400 people in August. Right. And most of those people were part-timers that had actually moved on from the city that they were working in. They might have been, and I'll make this up, but you know, they might have been working in Swansea, but actually living miles away, and they'd gone home to their family homes and no longer were studying in Swansea. And so a lot of the people that went in August fitted that category. Then in September and the early part of October, we've had another project where we've lost another sort of 600 people, because we recognise that even when we come back, and let's just say we get back, I don't know, December, January, I make no promises, but we won't be trading immediately at the levels, because there isn't going to be a vaccine that means everyone can be absolutely back to 100% capacity. So we've had to cut our cloth. And even though government have said that from the 1st of November, we will pay 67% of your part-time, well, largely part-time wages and your full-time wages, what you need to understand is that the company would still have to pay holiday pay, and would have to pay sort of any top-up they might feel is appropriate, and it'd have to sort of pay national insurance, which means if you've been shut 7 months, where's the money coming from? And certainly, although Deltic's bigger than others and could probably take a slightly longer-term view, most people don't work for Deltic. There's more nightclubs out there owned by, and late night venues owned by other companies. Most of them are individual or small companies. They don't have the money to retain these people. So it's a balancing act. And what you've got to do is work out what your costs will be to keep the business in an incubator. And that means you've got to consider, well, okay, if I really reduce it down, And if I get given the green light, it's going to take a bit longer, i.e. maybe 3 months, to be able to employ everybody to fill all the vacancies in those businesses. So I'm better off retaining a lot of those people so that when I get given the green light, I can open in 2 weeks.
Right. Get everyone straight back to it.
But it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all model. And you'll find that what works with Deltic might not work for Revolution, or might not work for the local nightclub, or might not work for the guys at Fabric. I mean, it's interesting. I talked to the guys at Fabric and at Ministry, and their view is because of London and the big name DJs that they rely on, and the lack of tourists, that they really can't see a way they can come back unless they have 100% capacity.
Right.
Now, it's not for me. If I can get 75% capacity in Watford or just about anywhere else, we can do okay. Because as you said, we've got large venues.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the future of like nightclubs in general, like where do you see this in regards to like restrictions, capacity, like you mentioned, like affecting the actual energy within the club? Do you think this will change how people experience nightclubs going forward compared to like what we've been brought through, going back to like the 80s and the 90s, etc.?
Listen, long term we'll be back. Whether it's herd immunity or whether it's a vaccine, we'll be back. I don't know when. In the meantime, I think we've got to accept the fact that we've got a responsibility to try and fit in with whatever it is that government and Public Health England and their equivalents in Scotland and Wales are happy to do for us. And that means that we've all got to sort of try and do our best in that middle stage. Mm-hmm. We'll get there. We'll definitely get there. We know that there's a huge appetite. This is the greatest advertising campaign for nightclubs that there has ever been.
100%.
Our Facebook's full of, why the hell aren't you back? Can't you sort those bozos out? Old gits in government, bloody all these old people, they're robbing our youth. And let me tell you, you'll have heard it even more. But so the demand will be there. But I believe that we've got to be flexible enough to sort of come back in whatever way we can, even if that means as beer halls with everybody seated in the short term. And actually, we were doing sort of all right, even though it wasn't what we were about, until the 10 o'clock curfew was put on.
Okay.
Right. I was about to ask how that's affected operations as well. So yeah, go on, speak some more on the 10 o'clock thing.
Well, it's devastated the whole sector. And the problem I have with that is that if you look back a month ago when we were talking to government, we had a really special case. We were the only ones without a route back. We were the only ones needing financial support. Now everyone needs financial support again. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that people understand in government or, and I'm an operator that keeps an eye on trends and everything else and listen to what's happening abroad. If we end up with a national lockdown, I think coming back, if you look at what's happened in other countries, there will not be a immediate, I'm talking about wider hospitality here, there will be a weakening of consumer demand. And it'll take time to come back. It'll be slower than when it opened up in June and July. Mm. So I think, ask for that at your peril. Ask for it as well if you honestly think it would only last 2 weeks and everything will be okay. I think you're a bozo if you think that. I think we'll be walking into a trap of lots of lockdowns all over the place. Now, therefore, I sort of buy what government are trying to do, but it's really been painful for hospitality to shut at 10 o'clock. And we are seeing some adaptations and people going out differently and early in the day and having parties of 6 in the afternoon on a Saturday. It's not what we are all about, but we've sort of muddled along as best we can. But inevitably, for us to get back and do what we're doing is going to take longer than for a pub to come back. Mm-hmm. But the pubs need 12 o'clock, and we need 12 o'clock to actually, make it cost effective for us to open.
Do you think that's the magic number then? Yeah, it's
I was about
12
to say.
o'clock.
I think 12 o'clock is definitely the magic number if you're a pub. It sort of works on a beer hall type thing, sort of, for us. But really, where we were seeing good growth was when we had 1 and 2 o'clock finishes. Mm-hmm. And we were having people leaving the bars and coming to our repurposed nightclubs as beer halls. And we had particular success in some businesses. I mean, Brighton was the standout one where, that people were coming to us between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and we were taking decent money. We were taking up, 30% of what we normally took, 40%. It was better than you could have hoped for. But at 12 o'clock, you might have half a chance, and at 10 o'clock, you've hardly any chance, but we're doing our best and giving it a go.
The crazy thing is, of course, like we've all seen it, 10 o'clock, all the venues kick out. Everyone jumps on public transport together, no matter what venue they've been in, or they're all piling into the local Tesco Express or the local off-licensing and carrying on back home. So it's I'm really surprised that the government didn't see that and then just backtrack and be like, okay, look, let's stagger it and give you step the licensing up that way.
I think what you've got to do is put it into the context of the scientists saying you were shut. And the reason that we got 10 o'clock is because that was the halfway house. Right. And that's not me guessing. I know that. Mm-hmm. And it's now come out. And I knew this weeks ago because of my position on the UK Hospitality Board. And therefore, whilst everyone moaned about 10, what the scientists wanted was complete closure of hospitality. Right. But when you consider that they're then saying that the R rate is likely to be only brought down by 0.1 because of hospitality, and that you read other surveys saying that hospitality is responsible for 4% or less of transmissions, and most of it is house, followed by school and university, followed by work, then actually you realise that they're playing politics with it. But I understand the messaging, and as much as I hate it, I would rather have a 10 o'clock with the pub industry surviving and getting by in some form, or restaurants, etc., all with difficulties, than actually complete closure, because I'm bothered about consumer bounce back in those sectors. I'm not bothered about it for nightclubs. We'll bounce back. The problem is we'll never get back before the pubs. So I need the pubs to be in a decent place.
Yeah, of course. Especially as we're approaching winter now also. Like it's one of those ones where why are people going to kind of drag themselves out in the cold until 10 o'clock? Well, we might as well just have a house party instead, and it works out cheaper. We don't have to leave the warmth of the house. And it's going to be even more of a struggle.
But then again, no house is as good as a nightclub.
This is true.
Two stories.
Mind you, your house looks like it might be.
My study.
Why do you think it is that a lot of countries abroad are seeing normality again in the clubs? Because I've seen some videos from clubs in France, for example. I can't remember every country.
No, you're right. Czech Republic. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the problems is that I think that a lot of the scientists and Public Health England, and I've got to say, they're not wanting to do this. They're not targeting. It's a horrible position they're in, a horrible job, and they're trying to balance public opinion and the scientists and the media and votes and public health and business. So there's a lot going on there, and they're trying to sort of weave between the icebergs. But reality is that if you think about why government are doing what they're doing, they're trying to keep things going in the best way that they can. But we know that it's unsustainable. And getting back to your point of the European countries in particular, our media are obsessed with bad news. So some guy walks around Korea and supposedly goes in a few nightclubs and infects a few people, and they shut those nightclubs. Straight in the paper, straight on the television. How terrible. I didn't say that they all reopened again after 2 weeks.
Right.
Spain. Look at these clubs. They're responsible for the spread of the virus in northeastern Spain. We need to shut late night. It's terrible. It's these young people. Funny that. Maybe it's actually because you want families to keep coming here. And if you blame the young and you're bringing your family and you're not going to use those venues, you won't see us as a problem. So there's an agenda. And the problem is there are agendas all over the place. So getting back to it, the government have got to consider these agendas. They're seeing what's happening in Europe. All the headlines are that nightclubs are closing. As soon as they open, they're not in the media.
Right.
But they are open.
I feel like the nightclubs are an easy target, aren't they? I feel like we've been scapegoated a little.
Yeah, well, listen, I think that UKH and NTIA have done a good job of actually stopping the scapegoatism.
Okay.
To a certain extent. We're not going quietly. We're not going to sit here and all go quietly bust and become collateral damage of this. And I've been in this business 39 years, 40 soon, and I've never known a media that has been as behind us right now. Mm. They see this as unfair. So you've been shut, you know opening date, and you've not been helped. That's unfair. Mm. And so I think that's why we've been able to get into government in a meaningful way to try and get financial help, but more importantly, not just financial help, but a COVID-secure way back when the time is right. Just like the people we're speaking to, these are the people who signed off plans for pubs, plans for restaurants, plans for gyms, plans for soft play areas. These will be the people that will sign us back. So it's important, but it's frustrating.
You mentioned that you're on the board for did you say it was the UK Hospitality?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more on what that is exactly? And
yeah, no. So the UK Hospitality, it's a trade association. Its biggest role is in these times lobbying politicians. On the board of UK Hospitality are a fantastic set of people. And a fantastically diverse set of hospitality sectors. So on there's people like Nick Varney, who runs Merlin Entertainment. If you've not heard of Merlin, you might have heard of their business: Alton Towers, the London Eye, Madame Tussauds, Sea Life Centres, massive, Legoland. They've got businesses all around the world. Yeah. We've got hoteliers, we've got bar owners, pub owners, and so the whole sector. My job is to lead on late nights. And bring late night into the thinking, and it's headed by a fantastic person called Kate Nichols, who's got a long pedigree of dealing with lobbying. That's very much her bag. And we're also on with our friends at the Nighttime Industry Association, which is much more focused about late night operators, live music, and also supports DJs, events businesses. Artists, and so much more focused, and they've done a great job as well. And I feed into Mike Kill, who's the CEO there. They've done a great job.
So between those two organisations, then that's almost like the bridge of communication between our sector and the government, the people that are making the laws and the decisions, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, right, that's good to know. I had what I thought was a solution to this in terms of closing the nightclubs, because what we were seeing is, for example, they closed, I think they put a lockdown on Wolverhampton, and then what happened was people just went from Wolverhampton and they were going out in like Leicester or other areas nearby. Yeah. What I suggested, I only suggested it here because I didn't really know who else to suggest it to, but was having some sort of geographical boundary around the clubs, because like I mentioned earlier, with the scanners that you can have on a club, it wouldn't, if they're not able to do it now, it wouldn't take much to adapt them to say, right, okay, anyone with ID that lives outside of 10 miles can't come into the club. Because then what you do is, if your area's locked down, you can't go to the next city because your driving license says you're from here. So would that have been like an actionable thing that could have helped?
The simple answer is, actually, I've not heard it before, but I think it could work. The key is making sure that people who are students have got their address for home students, but that will be possible. And so, it's quite a smart idea, and well done. And I'll take a note of that, because I think that we are going to continue to try. I think we will see local lockdowns, and I think that it's unlikely we will go with a national lockdown any day soon, because Labour have now supported a national lockdown.
Right.
And therefore the government will be seen to be giving in to the pressure
the opposition,
from the opposition. And of course, then you've got it's a slightly bizarre thing, but you also got difficult political positions in Wales and Scotland, where whatever they say, we know there's a different game there, and that is, we'll never do what Westminster does.
Yeah, basically.
And that's their job. Their job is to try and sort of promote themselves as a regional government looking after their country. I'm not in favour of splitting the union at all, but I understand that if you ask a politician who's in the SNP, they're definitely going to try and make every case going to then say, look how well we looked after you, and that horrible London Westminster crew were terrible, and please vote independence now. And what else would you expect? So get it.
Yeah, 100%. The question that I forgot, by the way, it came back to me. The government, obviously, there was, I forget her name, but there was a lady that infamously was on a news report, and she said about DJs and entertainers not really having proper jobs, and that they would only kind of support proper work, quote unquote. And we've, as DJs and entertainers, been told now that we should retrain. And Fatima's not allowed to carry on her dance career. She's going to have a career in cyber. You know, that advert that went out. How do you feel about that? And as DJs, as the DJ community, for the ones of us that are just career DJs without a conventional day job, what would your advice be in this time at the moment? Do you think we should be out there retraining and looking for
Do I hell? What an insult. What an insult. And and there's been a bit of that, and I think there's been a lot of climb down. You're not hearing it now. I understand why they may have said something like, well, if you're in a business that's become uneconomical, maybe you need another job. But that's not what came out of the lips. No. I would actually say, well, I'm sorry to any politician, but perhaps you should get a proper job.
Yeah.
And go along and learn what it's like to not get paid or get massively reduced pay. You're okay coming up with all these policies because you're paid for by government. But who pays government? Government doesn't have money. It's our money.
Yeah.
And they borrow money against our money. And so all of the people who seem to be shouting we should lock down, they're not the ones that are worried about losing their house or worried about, you know, whether or not they're going to be able to retire ever, for example. There's a lot of people out there that have tapped into their pensions because they're worried about their jobs where they've been old enough to. You know, it's scary out there. But so, you know, so my answer is, of course, no one should retrain. I certainly understand why people, and I know DJs, friends of mine, who are out there doing driving jobs whilst they're waiting. Well, they're not for a minute thinking that they're not going to get back on the decks. The idea of somebody retraining, what as a brain surgeon?
Yeah,
oh, that's it.
At this point, I'm not sure what I should. I don't have any qualifications past GCSE. I kind of went into college, got a diploma, which doesn't really mean anything, and straight into DJing. So yeah, all of my adult life has been clubs and DJing and music.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? Same here. You're thinking, I'm going to retrain Peter. Why don't you go and retrain? Well, do you know?
What would you retrain as, Peter, if you had the choice?
Do you know, what a great question. Answer is I will never retrain. If I had a choice, if I go back, I actually I wish I'd sort of followed a path of law of all things. I'm not sure about the brain, but I've always enjoyed it. But probably since I was about 50, I've become to sort of, I'm glad I wasn't a lawyer, because most of the lawyers I know give me very expensive advice, and it's not always right. As an old mate of mine once said, I pay for the best advice, but I don't always take it. But maybe that would have been what I've done. Well past that day now. No, I'm very happy, and I don't really want to be doing anything else. So I'm not going to. And I'm certainly not retraining as a DJ.
Yeah, yeah, there's not a lot of work going around at the moment.
Yeah, DJ disastrous.
There you go. There's his DJ name. We got there in the end.
Amazing. So, I mean, is there anything that we haven't covered today that you wanted to cover, or anything that you kind of wanted to put out there in terms of the nightlife industry, the business, and anything at all?
It's very tough. And all I want to say is, listen, first of all, thanks. There's a lot of people out there that are just waiting on us getting back and have remained loyal, whether it's DJs or bar staff or management, in the hope that we'll get back. And I want to work hard to repay that loyalty to every single one. And I can't give a date. I'd love to be able to give a date. I'd love to be able to even give an indication. I tell you when we'll get back. It'll be when it's clear that all these statistics are moving in the right direction. And that's when we will get back. And I'll work tirelessly to get us back, even if it's in a COVID secure, slightly alien environment, to give our people hope and give them the ability to not just earn money, but, you know, sort of get out of the rut of sitting at home, of worrying, of, you know, there's only so many DIY jobs and Netflix programs you can watch. And I know that a lot of people out there enjoyed the first 4 or 5 months, but have really struggled of late, mentally. And so, you know, I'll keep fighting. And what I'm saying is just thanks and stick with us. And things are out of my control. Things are out of my control to a certain extent, even at Deltic. We need money from somewhere. You know, we are victims as much as all those other people. And, you know, but one thing I will say is we won't give up.
In terms of reopening the company, when the government do say, okay, well, nightclubs can start again, would you look for complete opening every venue, or would it be staggered venues just to kind of get some money coming back into the company so that you can roll out other venues as well?
We'll go as quickly as we can. You know, we're ready to open.
Right.
So it shouldn't be that we need to think about it and do one a week or so. We've got a great operational structure. We've got great training, and it's online. We've spent a lot of time getting our marketing act together, ready to come back. So, you know, the simple answer is we'll go as fast as we can. It might be that it might take us 2 or 3 weeks to open, but my job is to push everybody to open as fast. I don't want it. Oh, well, I think what I'll do is I'll do York one week and I'll do Leeds the next, and then I might do stuff that. Let's get them open.
Right. It's good news. I know there's a lot of people going to be celebrating that when it happens, most definitely.
Yeah. But it's easy for me to say that, and then other people have to go out there and make it happen. But my job sometimes is to push people.
Amazing. Well,
all good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I know, obviously, like you said, you're working 12-hour days, kind of 5-6 days a week at the moment. So we appreciate you taking the time. It's substantially longer than like a BBC or a Sky News interview, so we do appreciate it. And then hopefully what we'd love to do actually is once everything is back to normal and things are operating again, it would be great if we could get you back on for kind of like a post-COVID assessment of everything.
Okay. Let's hope that I haven't got white hair and a beard by then.
There's nothing wrong with having a beard. There's absolutely
no, dead right. No, listen, I'm certain we'll get back in some way in the not too distant future, and you know, hopefully that'll give some work to some of the DJ community, even if it's sort of not quite what we wanted. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's better than not being back, let me tell you. And we'll just keep taking every bit as it comes our way.
Incredible. Well, Peter, thanks very much for your time.
Okay, good.
Thanks for your time, Peter. Appreciate that, dude.
All the best
to you very much.
Cheers, thanks. Bye.
Take care. So you're watching the Talkover Podclart, DJ Stylist, DJ Double, and that was Peter Marks, the CEO of Deltic, who, if you didn't get from that conversation, that is the largest nightclub operator in the UK.
So it seems like a very bubbly chap.
Yeah, indeed. Most definitely. So you know what to do.
He had a couple of jokes as well.
Hey, he's got the banter there at some point. So yeah, Spotify, Apple Music. Oh, are we on Amazon Music yet properly?
Oh, I don't think it's cleared. It's taken a minute. I've put it through on the site.
Amazon Music coming soon.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So at Talkover Pod on Twitter and Instagram as well, and of course hit us up, Stylo, DJ Double, you know, the socials and all that good stuff.
Don't know.
And we'll be back again with another episode.
That was now I can say it now. That was the tamest podcast we've ever done. Can I say that now? I mean,
I've got to say actually
before we went live, Double's like, Stylist, compose yourself, mate.
I was like, yeah, we've got to be professional on this one. This definitely, you know, they're going to be like, why are you so professional?
Bro, once my tongue starts, I was like, let's not say too much today, Sty. Yeah.
The most professional episode ever. But I hope you lot got something from that anyway.
Yeah, definitely, man. He dropped some gems.
Good conversation. So yeah, you know what to do. # Talkover Podclart. I'm out.
I didn't think you was going to say that when Pete was still on the line.
No, standard. Of course I'm going to say it. Podclart. It's the Podclart, isn't it? It's the
Podclart. Until next time.
Peace.